Well, hello everyone. My name's Dennis Fancett and I'm from the Diocese of Newcastle Generous Giving Team. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you online today, exploring the place generosity and indeed generous giving should play in our lives as Christians. Now, the gospel passage we heard earlier from Matthew chapter 16 is actually quite challenging. Poor Peter is sternly rebuked for saying something which may be perhaps wrong, but it could only have been said from the very best of intentions. Jesus makes it clear that not only must he suffer, but ultimately anyone who is intent on following him must be prepared to suffer as well. He repeats almost word for word a sentence already recorded a few chapters earlier in Matthew chapter 10. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. That's verse 25 of the passage we've just heard. But this time he adds another memorable quote that I'm sure you're all familiar with. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world but lose their soul? Now, whilst the context of the passage talks about physical security, arrest, suffering, even execution for the sake of the gospel, this specific reference to gaining the whole world widens out the things that can possibly distract us from following Jesus and hints at money, status, power, and things like that. And yet, few of us are likely to have the option of gaining the whole world, even if we wanted to. So the force of the challenge of this verse is often overlooked and put in the "it doesn't apply to me" box. Nevertheless, there could be some more modest financial or other types of objectives that either consciously or perhaps subconsciously we aspire to. We can be tempted to prioritise our Western financial values of security, planning for the future, living a reasonable life, providing for our children and family over and above the spiritual values of wanting to be a disciple of Jesus. But Jesus says, what's the point? Where will it get us? What will it achieve? A nice life, a better life, a more comfortable life? Maybe. In fact, quite probably, yes. But then what? So it's an invitation to us all to consider what we really value in life and to carry out a little stock check to confirm we are indeed investing in the things we value, and to ask ourselves some honest questions. Do we value our local parish church or benefice? Do we value the wider Anglican community, the diocese, and indeed the national and worldwide communion of which we are part? Do we see our faith, our belief in God, our willingness to be regarded as his ambassadors or servants, as our route to finding life? Do these things make us feel more fulfilled, more at peace with ourselves and God? Considering these questions, we'll put in place the important foundational cornerstones that dictate our attitude to giving. If I or any of us are simply giving out of a sense of obligation, well, yes, whilst the value of your gift is nevertheless appreciated and we thank you for it, I do wonder if we're missing out. Giving, in particular giving to and through our local parish church, is a great way of declaring to our innermost being that we are prioritising God first. We put his values above our own. In that sense, it's a sacrifice and it's worship. We joyfully bring our gifts to the altar, not out of a sense of compulsion, but because we affirm every time we give, every time we see that standing order going out from our account, that we are seeking to rise to Jesus' incredible challenge. Absolutely nothing is worth more than finding our faith in him. We recognise it won't help us if we gain or retain a single penny if in fact we lose our soul. We choose, if you like, to deliberately lose parts of our life in the here and now in the physical sense in order that we may find it for eternity, and in the spiritual sense. This is core to our beliefs as Christian. Well, so far, all well and good. But my guess is some of us are thinking that this is okay for people who have got lots of money to start with. They can afford to give. But what about ordinary people like us? What about people for whom money is tight and getting tighter? So the first thing to say is it's not about how much we give. It's about our attitude to giving. It's about what confirms what comes first in our thinking. It wouldn't be right for me or indeed anyone to say how much you should be giving. That's for each of us to resolve privately with God. It may genuinely be the case that some of us might need during this exceptional time of crisis to cut back on what we give. But that in turn, of course, means that others who are not struggling quite as much might wish to consider giving more. But what I do ask, though, is that we consider these issues honestly and prayerfully, and we consider them in the light of Jesus' words about it being absolutely pointless to gain the whole world but to lose our soul in the process due to the choices and prioritizations that don't reflect our standing as people of faith, or even due to simply not thinking about the issue, just letting life and past habits and spending patterns drift on and not saying, hold on a minute, is the way I'm spending my money reflecting what I believe, my faith in God and my commitment to living as a disciple of Jesus? And I also ask that we consider our choices in the light of the countless stories in the Bible of people who didn't have much but shared or gave a lot. Think of the widow in 1 Kings 17 who gave from the very little and very last of what she had when she responded to Elijah's request to share her last meal with him. Or another widow in Mark chapter 12 who gave her 2 small coins, of whom the Bible records she gave all she had to live on. That means in today's language, she gave her food money, her electricity money. Strong stuff indeed. Or maybe think of the Macedonian Christians of whom Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, in the midst of the very severe trial, their overflowing joy and extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able and even beyond their ability. And let's also consider our choices in the light of the thousands of people we don't know, who we nevertheless stand in communion with as fellow Christians, from all countries and all people groups of the world, some of whom have absolutely nothing or very little. You know, several years ago, I spent a few months in Hong Kong, and whilst there, I attended the church which was led by the British missionary Jackie Pullinger, who started an amazing work amongst heroin addicts. Many of those addicts had found faith through Jackie's work, and they'd started coming to church. But in Hong Kong, certainly at that time, there was no welfare state, and if you had no job, you had absolutely nothing. And yet, there was a song they used to sing at that church. It has in it the line, "And now let the poor say, I am rich." And those former drug addicts with absolutely nothing, they used to sing that song with gusto. You see, they'd got it. They had found God. And they knew that what they had found was worth far more than anything anyone could buy or any investment they could make. They were living examples of people who had lost absolutely everything in life but had found Jesus. They knew the value of that, and they were so grateful. The truth is, when times are tough, we get the opportunity to make decisions that count, decisions that reflect our core values, decisions that cause us to find life rather than to lose it. Decisions that cement and affirm the faith that is within us. So I encourage us to meditate on the fact that we are created in the image of a generous God, and we're called to reflect his character in every way. That means it is part of our own calling, part of our faith, to be generous ourselves and to give freely and cheerfully. And let's meditate too on these amazing words of Jesus. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? And resolve in our hearts to take those words on board and to let the priorities and values we choose shine out from our lives. Well, I do trust that you found these words interesting and thought-provoking. I'd like to thank you so much for listening to me today. It's been a pleasure to have this opportunity to share with you through this video. God bless every one of you. Amen.